Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. Speak, fool. What is it now? At last. Frostmourne hungers. Your pain finally. Speak, fool. This is more like it. Tread lightly. Frostmourne.
Our allied town is being attacked!
No one orders me around. Tread lightly. What is it now? Finally. At last. This is more like it. At last. Finally. This is more like it. For the Lich King. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Your pain shall be lifted. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers.
Greetings, friend.
Speak, fool. Tread lightly. At last. Speak, fool.
Our allied town is being
Finally.
attacked!
Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Tread lightly. At last. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Speak, fool. Finally. At last. This is more
Our
like
allied town is being attacked!
No one
We're under attack!
Finally. What is it now? At last. This is more like it. You will know endless torment. Tread lightly. Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool. Tread lightly. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. At last. What is it now?
Right the way.
Speak, fool. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool. This is more like it. Tread lightly. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool.
Our
At
allied town
last.
is being
This
attacked!
is more like it. At last.
Right the way.
Tread lightly. No one orders me around. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. Tread lightly. Frostmourne hungers. At last. No one orders me around. This is more like it. Glory to the Scourge. Finally. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it.
Our hero has been slain!
Speak, fool. Finally. What is it now? This is more like it. Speak, fool. What is it now? Finally. At last. Finally. At last.
Point the way.
No one orders me around. This is what. At last. Tread lightly. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Speak, fool. Tread lightly. Speak, fool. For the Lich King. Faithless coward. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. At last. Tread lightly. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool. At last. This is more like it. No one orders me around.
We're under attack!
What is it now? Finally. This is more like it. Speak, fool.
Point the way.
Tread lightly. At last. This is more like it. What is it now? Finally. No one orders me around. Speak, fool. What is it now? Speak, fool. What is it now? Tread lightly. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally.
Our allies' hero has
At
been
last.
slain!
Speak, fool. This is more like it. Tread lightly. Speak, fool. No one orders me around. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. Tread lightly. Finally. No one orders me around. This is more. At last. This is more like it.
Our hero has been slain! Our allied town is being attacked!
Point the way.
Tread lightly. Speak, fool. At last. No one orders me around. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. What is it now? Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Tread lightly.
Our allied town is
Finally.
being attacked!
Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. I'll make sure you suffer. Finally. Now. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. You will know endless time. This is more like it. Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. Tread lightly. Finally. At last. Finally.
Our allied town is being attacked! Our allied town is being attacked!
What is it now? This is more like it. Finally. Glory to the Scourge! Tread lightly. What is it now? No one orders me around. At last. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. At last. Frostmourne hungers. For the Lich King. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers.
Point the way.
Speak, fool. Tread lightly. No one orders me around. What is it now? Finally. Speak, fool. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Tread lightly. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last.
Our allied town is being
This is
attacked!
Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Frostmourne
Our allied
hungers.
town is being
This
attacked!
is more like it. No one orders me around. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Face the coward.
Our allied town is being attacked!
Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
Our allied town is being attacked! Has been slain! Our allies' hero has been slain! Our allied town is being attacked! Our allied town is being attacked!
What is it now? At last.
We
Tread
need more
lightly.
gold!
Speak, fool. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
Our allied
This is
town
more
is
like
being
it.
attacked!
At last. Frostmourne hungers. No one orders me around.
Our
Finally.
allied town is being attacked!
Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. Finally. At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
Our allied town is being
Finally.
attacked!
Frostmourne hungers. Tread lightly. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. What is it now? Tread lightly. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Now, Frostmourne. I'll make sure you suffer. Finally. Face coward.
Our
Frostmourne
allied town is
hungers.
being attacked!
Finally. What is it now? At last. Finally. This is what I want. Finally. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Tread lightly. Finally. This is more like it.
Point the way.
No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Tread lightly. You will be endless. Finally. Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. For the Lich King. This is more like it. At last.
Our hero has been slain. Our allied town is being attacked. Our allies' hero has been slain.
Tread lightly. No one orders me around. What is it now? Speak, fool. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers. Tread lightly. This is more like it. No one orders me
Our
around.
allied town is being attacked.
Tread lightly. At last.
We're under
Speak,
attack.
Finally. This is more like it. At last. Finally. No one orders me around. Speak, fool. This is more like it. Tread lightly. What is it now? Tread lightly. I was a fool to trust
Our
him.
allies' hero has been slain.
At last. This is more like it. What is it now? At last. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. You will know endless torment. Tread lightly. Faithless coward. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Finally. Speak, fool. No one orders me.
Our allied town is being attacked.
Speak, fool. No one orders me around. Tread lightly. At last. Frostmourne
Our allied
hungers.
town is being attacked.
Finally. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Finally. Speak, fool. What is it now? Speak, fool. At last. No one orders me around. Finally. At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. What is it now? Speak, fool. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. What is it now? This is more like it. Finally. Tread lightly. No one orders me around. At last.
Our allies here
This is
have been slain.
Glory to the scourge. At last. Frostborn.
Our allied
Frostborn
town is being
hungers.
attacked.
This is what is it now? Frostborn hungers. At last. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. Finally. Speak, fool. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Oh, sure you suffer. Finally. Now, Frostborn. This is more like it.
Our
No
allied
one
town
orders
is
me
being
around.
attacked.
At last. This is more like it. What is it now? Speak, fool. Frostborn hungers. This is
Our
more
allied town is being attacked.
Finally. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Finally. What is it? Frostborn hungers.
Our
Finally.
allied town is being attacked.
This is more like it. No one orders me around. Frostborn hungers. Tread lightly. Speak, fool. Tread lightly. What is it now?
Our
Tread
allied
lightly.
town is being attacked.
What is it now? Speak, fool. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally.
Point the way.
Our
No
allied
one
town
orders
is
me
being
around.
attacked.
Frostborn hungers. Finally. Frostborn hungers. What is it now? This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This
Our
is more
allied
like
town
it.
is being attacked.
Frostborn hungers.
Our allied hero has been slain. Our hero has been slain. Our allied town is being attacked.
No one orders me around. Finally. Tread lightly. Frostborn hungers. At last. Speak, fool.
Our allied town is being
This
attacked.
is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Your pain shall stay together.
Our allied town is being attacked.
This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Tread lightly. At last. This is more like it. At last. Finally.
Greetings, friend.
What is it now? At last. Finally. Tread lightly. This is more like Speak, fool. Frostmourne hunger. What is it now? Tread lightly. What is it now? This is more like it. Speak. At last. No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers.
Our allied town is being
At
attacked.
last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more
Our
Frostmourne
allied hero has been slain.
No one. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. At
Our
last.
allied town is
This
being
is more
attacked.
like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. At
We're under
last.
attack. Our
This
allied
is
town
more
is
like
being
it.
attacked.
Finally. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool. At last. Finally. No one orders me around. At last.
Our allied town is being
Frostmourne
attacked.
hungers. At last. This is more like it. At last. Tread lightly. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. For the Lich King. Now, Frostmourne. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. No one orders me around. At last. Frostmourne hungers.
We're under
Your pain
attack.
shall be legendary. At last. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Vicious coward. At last. This is more like it. At last. At last.
Our allies' hero has been
This
slain.
is more like it. What is it? At last.
Welcome to our village.
Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. At last. Frostmourne
Greetings, friend.
hungers. This is more like it. At last. Tread lightly. This is
Our
more like
allied
it.
town is being attacked.
Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. This is Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Glory to the Scourge. This is more like it. At
Our
last.
allies' hero has been slain.
Your pain shall be legendary. Finally.
Our hero has been slain. Our allied town is being attacked. allied town is being attacked!
What is it now? At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Tread lightly.
Our
This is
allied
more
town
like
is
it.
being attacked!
Frostmourne hungers. At last.
Our allied hero has been slain!
Speak, fool. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. No one orders me around. Finally. At last. This is at last. Faithless coward. Now. Finally. Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. This is
Point the way.
no one orders me around. Speak, fool. Tread lightly. Frostmourne hungers. No one orders me around. At last. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Oh. This is more like it. What is it now? At last. Frostmourne hungers. Tread lightly. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Finally. Frostmourne
Our allied
hungers.
hero has been
This
slain!
is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool.
Welcome to our village. Greetings,
At
friend.
last.
Welcome to our
No
village.
one orders me
Greetings, friend.
around. What is it now? Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Speak, fool. This is more like it.
Our allied town is being attacked!
At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Tread lightly. No one will me around. Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. No one orders me around. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more
Our
like
allied
it.
town is being attacked!
Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. For the Lich King. At last.
Our allied town is being attacked!
Tread lightly. For the Lich King. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Finally. Speak, fool. Tread lightly. No one orders me around. Speak, fool. At last. Tread lightly. Speak, fool. Finally. No one orders me around. At last. This is more like it. Finally. Glory to the scourge. At last. Frostborn. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn. Finally. What is it? At last. Finally. Tread lightly. Speak, fool.
Hello there.
Tread lightly. No one orders me around. At last. Finally. Speak, fool. At last. Frostborn hungers. Finally.
Our allied town is
At
being
last.
attacked.
Finally. This is more like it. At last. I'll make sure you see. Now, Frostborn. Finally. No one orders me around.
Our allied town
At
is being
last.
attacked.
Tread lightly. This is more like Frostborn hungers. At last. Fate coward. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Finally.
Our
This is
allied hero has been slain.
Frostborn hungers. No one orders me around. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. This is more like it. Finally. At last. This is more like it. At last.
Point the way.
What is it now?
Point the way.
Tread lightly. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostborn hungers.
Our hero has been slain. Our allied town is being attacked.
No one orders me around. Finally. Speak, fool. Frostborn hungers. At last. Tread lightly. This is more like. At last. Finally. This is more. What is it now? This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Tread lightly. Finally. Frostborn hungers. This is
Our allied town is being attacked! We're under attack!
finally. For the Lich King, this is finally. This is more light. Frostborn hungers. This is more light. No one goes around. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more light. At last. For the Lich King. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally.
Our hero has been slain. Our allies' hero has been slain.
Speak, fool. This is more like it. What is it now? No one orders me around. At last. Finally. Speak, fool. At last. Frostmourne. What is it now? No one orders me around. Speak, fool. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. I'll make sure you suffer. Now, Frostmourne. At last.
Our allied town is being attacked.
I'll make sure you suffer. Now, Frostmourne. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
Point the way.
Speak, fool. What is it now? This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. At last. Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it. At last.
Our allied town is being attacked. Our hero has been slain.
Frostmourne hungers. This is more